Hello, everybody. We're doing this video as a presentation for our capstone project for the course Computer Graphics Comp 4302/6909 for Memorial University. I am Carlos Salcedo, and this project was done in collaboration with Shiplu does as well. What we have here is a project built using Three.js, Fizzy.js, multiple textures, and a lot of different features here. So to get started with the project, the first thing you're going to need is the zip file. From the zip file, you decompress all the files. In this case, I've already done that, and I have them here in my downloads folder. I called it final project. Once you're in this particular folder, all you need to do is actually run a server. So I'm just going to run this on another tab. It's in the same directory. So what we do is we run python -m http server and a port number. In this case, I'm choosing 333. And the only reason I'm doing this here in a different bash is because once this thing gets running, I'm going to allow it. Every single time I make a request, it's just going to log right here. But I wanted to keep this ready just to show you like the files that we have in there and the folder structure. Index.html is just going to contain a little bit of information about the project itself, but all the actual materials are actually going to be found inside the Fizzy.js folder. So to actually run this project, all you really need is a terminal, download the zip file, decompress it, run your server, in this case, python -m http server 3333, and that's it. From there, we go into the actual browser. Up here, we're going to click localhost 3333, and that should take me to the index page. In this index page, we have a few more details. Over here, we have all the things that or all the links to like libraries, video tutorials, things that help us make this actual project. And then here we have some external credits that we need to attribute because even though we imported a lot of models, the licensing, or they were created under the Creative Commons license, and some of them actually want to be mentioned at least in the project. So there's two versions. There's a light version and a normal version. Light version doesn't have all the features. So I recommend using the normal version. As I say, we included a lot of additional features into this project. So something I've done to be able to run this smoothly, I have Zoom, which is how I'm recording this meeting, but I'm also using the terminal, Chrome, and that's about it. And Visual Studio Code, I've kind of basically closed everything. And I've even restarted my computer just to make sure all the memories and caches, they're all perfectly clear. This with just the sole intent of making this thing run as smoothly as possible. So when I click into the normal version, which you could click using either normal version here or no normal version here, they're just links that will take you here to the capstone project. Here we have the instructions. So you got to click to play. Once you click, the mouse is actually locked. So you won't be able to release it unless you press escape. Movement is pretty intuitive for anyone who's familiar with video games. WASD, jump, just use space, look around, move the mouse. We have an ambient light that when you turn it on, it basically illuminates all the scene and makes everything that's dark perfectly clear. We have the numbers from 0 to 6 that allow us to change positions, to go to either the starting position or to visit each of the rooms inside the museum. And inside certain rooms, there are certain functions that you could toggle on and that the user can play with. So rather than read the instructions, let me get started with the museum. There's a couple of bugs in here that might pop up. In particularly, we have the shadows, and depending on how fast my computer is rendering the scene, it may occasionally just hop from one place to another. So this is my scene. As you can see, we're using a skybox. This is just so everything around looks nice and smooth, so that, we don't have just a blank background, I guess you could say. The floor is actually a grass texture, and if you try to exit, you're actually pushed out. This is one of you could call this some sort of physics simulations, in the sense that once you collide against the wall, it kind of just pushes you back. But because it lets you move a little bit outside of the cube before pushing you back, we didn't really implement the simulation in the walls of the museum themselves. So even though we do have doors, or obviously gateways in here, you could traverse through the walls. But as I said, that's because it would just look jittery if we stop users as they traverse through the walls. So we only left that for the outer edges. So we stay within our skybox. The first room that we're entering here, this is what we call the modern art room. We're also debating whether to call it the physics room, because in this particular room, we have a couple of physics simulations going on. So I'm going to turn on the ambient light by pressing the J button on my keyboard. That is actually a video texture to make it look like a portal. And in the floor, we actually have a mirror. Although the portal looks more like a portal in the mirror because it's farther away, or the mirror makes it look like it's farther away. And you made me ask, okay, so what's the physics simulation that's going on here? Well, every time you press B, a box pops up. As you can tell, the box bounces. And if it hits other objects, it will actually move the other objects. If I leave B pressed for like a couple of seconds, a lot of boxes are actually going to pop out and come out here. The images and the texture in the boxes are just randomly selected. We have about 60 different images, and we're choosing how to duplicate them, how much they're repeated in each cube just randomly. There's a lot of randomness going on here. Also, whenever they bounce on something, there's an extra tone that gets changed. So they may start, for example, red and end up being something like, oh, there's perfect example, red, and end up just being in a green tone. Another feature we have here, as you move around the rooms, and also to facilitate things, you could actually change locations by pressing the numbers 0 through 6 on your keyboard. So if I press 0, I go back to my initial location. If I press 1, it takes me inside, the modern arts room. And it's modern art because, well, it's messy and it's just random. And I guess that's how a lot of modern art looks nowadays. In the next room, we have the planetarium. So I'm going to turn off the ambient light by pressing the J key. And there's a couple of functions that we can see here in the planetarium. The sun itself, regardless of the light, is always stays bright because, well, it's the sun and we chose to give it that effect. M and N, or actually the keys M and the key N, allow me to play with the speed of the objects. I can have them move forward, move back, just basically rotate as fast as I want to around the sun. If I press the V key, I will pause them in place. In particular, you can see that the Earth actually has a moon. You can see that the moon is casting a shadow on the Earth. And as it moves, the moon actually rotates around the Earth. Additionally, if I want to see the starting positions and all the planets aligned, I could press V just to pause them, and then C to reset them back to their original position. I've actually included Pluto, even though Pluto is no longer considered a planet, but I just thought it would be fun to have it there for nostalgia's sake. Another feature that you can find here in the planetarium is that you could actually play with the intensity of the sunlight. So by pressing the L and K keys, you could actually see the light go up or down. Well, that's about as bright as it gets. And the sun would actually illuminate the planets and also the exhibits that are in the other rooms. This is a minor glitch. For some reason, the shades actually look kind of box or squares, even though these are supposed to be spheres. It might just have to do with the way 3JS is rendering the spheres here. So if I turn on the ambient light again, let me just dim down the sun. I can go into each of the rooms. Each of these rooms is actually culturally significant to us. Shiplu himself is actually from Bangladesh. Here we have the Bangladesh tiger, some of their museums, historical places. There's a map of Bangladesh, and these are some places that would be nice to visit if anyone ever decides to go to Bangladesh. Shiplu said these are the most, or one of the most recommended places to go in there and visit. So maybe someday I might pop by and check it out. In the next room, we actually have the Canadian room. In this room, something we tried to emulate was the glass effect. So we can see that there's a leaf. And in the leaf, you could see a light. That light is actually the light that's supposed to be coming from the sun. So as I move around, you can see that the glow actually changes. I'm gonna turn on the ambient light again. The Canadian flag, some Canadian art, including the anthem, some totem poles that has to do with the native people here in Canada, or I believe Inuits. It's another way that they're called. In the back here, we just have a collage of things that are iconic from Canada: the moose, poutine, maple syrup, And over here, we have a few facts about the wildlife and flora in Canada. As I mentioned before, by pressing the numbers 0 through 6, you can change positions. If I press 3, I'm taken to Bangladesh. If I press 4, I'm taken to the Canadian room. And if I press 5, I'm taken to the final room here, which is the Colombian room. Over here, we have some Colombian art. This is a painting by Fernando Botero, one of Colombia's most famous artists. And the one thing that makes him unique is that he likes to draw, I'm not sure what the correct term nowadays would be, but obese people. Like, all of his art is always going to be someone who's obese or overweight, but that makes his art more unique and more interesting and enjoyable. And I personally find this Mona Lisa kind of funny, but I enjoy it. That's kind of what makes him cool. Same thing as in Canada, we have some background images that are representative of Colombia. And in here, we actually have 4 models that we imported. We have some pre-Columbian masks that's over 1,000 years old, native foods, a couple of animals native to Colombia, like the capybara and the anteater, and Simon Bolivar, which you could say is the guy who led the revolution in Colombia to free the people from Spain. In the center of the room, we actually have a map of Colombia, wildlife and flora, the Colombian flag. And if I turn on the ambient light, even though it's kind of hard to tell, there's actually 5 lights here. Each of the exhibits actually has a yellow light in the background for the first 2 exhibits. The centerpiece actually has a white light. Then we have a blue light and a red light. And if you can tell, that kind of corresponds to what we have in the Colombian flag. One last element to mention and show, it's kind of like a bonus. We wanted to create an abstract park at the top, like in the roof, or an abstract garden. So by pressing 6, it's the only way to teleport here, you could say. We can have these trees that are just randomly generated, and they're randomly generated with random shapes. So if you ever run this program, there's a chance you might not get this exact same configuration, but you get different configurations. Every time I press the key T, new trees are going to pop up. And we have a bit of a sort of simulation here that, or physics simulation that I haven't mentioned. Whenever I press spacebar, I actually jump. And if I keep it pressed, you have that video game effect of the double jump. But additionally, depending on the size of the tree, obviously if I'm inside a shape, it becomes invisible. But if the tree is small enough, I can actually jump on top of it. So as I am jumping, because there's like a bunch of trees here, I am actually on top of the tree. So as I'm on top of each of these trees, maybe I can eventually climb my way all the way to the top. I don't know, just if the user gets bored, I guess you can try to just populate this with random trees and hop on top of them until eventually he makes it to the top. It's just a funny and interesting thing that I thought was worth trying to put. And this is basically a walkthrough of our museum. This is what it looks like from the outside. If I press 0, it will take me to the initial position. And one final thing to mention, the shapes in the roof are actually flat shaded, not smooth shaded like all the other shapes inside the museum. So if I go to the roof one more time, turn off the ambient light, we actually have a spotlight at the very top, which is that black cylinder that you see up there. By using the keys 7, 8, and 9 on the keyboard, not on the number pad, but on the actual keyboard, you can control the RGB colors of the light and of the cylinder. So the more I press the 7 key, the more red it becomes. If I press R, it resets. I press 8, it goes green. And as you can see in this particular tree right here, we have the flat shading effect where we can actually see like the different, you could say polygons or faces that make up each of the trees. Just because I'm pressing 8 doesn't mean I cannot add red. So I could press 8 and then 7 and get an orange zone, or I can press 9 and eventually, give it as much blue as I can and get that purple light right there. Additionally, or I guess it looks purple because of the original color of that particular tree. To know the exact light, I guess you could look at the reflection in the floor. So I do R to reset the light. 7 goes full red. 8 just adds a little bit of G, so green. And 9 will add some blue, which, when you go all RGB full value, you get the white light here. I'm just going to reset it. Just Put a little bit of red in there. And the other thing I can do with the spotlight that's above, since we have different trees, oops, sorry, let me just teleport back up there. Since we have different trees, we can actually move the spotlight around using the letters Q and E, or X and Z. Sorry, X and Z. So by pressing the letter Q, I can make it move on the X axis. So it will move either to the left, or by pressing the letter E, it would move to the right. I can also bring it farther or closer to me by pressing the letters X and Z. And that's how you move the roof spotlight. And as you move it around, you could see some of the flash shading in the different shapes. As I said, the shapes are generated randomly. So they will have a random number of sides, random number of polygons, and they will look different depending on where you're standing and the lighting effect. I'm going to turn on the ambient light again. The only reason I like to keep the ambient light off every now and then is so that it's easier to see the light. So for example, if I turn off the light, it's very easy to see that I have the red light on. But if I turn on the ambient light, it's harder to tell. Let me go back to the beginning, and that is basically a tour of the museum. I hope you enjoyed. Key is captured. Oh, and there's one last thing I would like to show. Coming back here to the physics room or the modern art room, escape. I'm going to go into the code. And from here in the code, there's just one thing I like to modify just for the sake of, I guess, looking at some of the interesting things that you can do with Three.js or the libraries that are there. So right now I'm dropping boxes, and the boxes will behave in a very particular way. But something I can do is I could change the box. I said it's done with Physi.js. That's how we're simulating the physics. I could easily change this and make this a cylinder. And that alone will just change the complete, the way in which the boxes behave as I drop them. So I'm going to save. I'm going to come back to my browser, and I'm just going to refresh this page. I'm going to turn on the ambient light again. I'm just going to press 1 just to be teleported inside. I guess I didn't wait long enough, so the video didn't turn on. But either way, I'm just going to go straight into the physics simulation. So when I press B, you can see like the different boxes are falling down. But for example, if you look at that box, it's rolling, and it keeps rolling because it has, or we told Physi.js to treat it as a cylinder. So if it's a cylinder, that's what allows it to keep rotating the way they are, rather than actually being a cube. So that's generating this awkward effect where they're kind of going through the floor, but also not being perfectly parallel or perpendicular to the floor, depending, or not having sides that are perfectly parallel or perpendicular to the floor. I guess because it's a box, I'm telling it to treat it as a cylinder. That center box is probably never going to stop moving until eventually gets to a stable position, I guess. So it's just some of the shapes that we could play with. As I said, we made these boxes. We could have made spheres, and there it goes. And just as a funny anecdote to mention, the walls inside the museum are actually also made using Physi.js, so that when they hit the wall, they actually bounce back. If I don't specify that the walls, or if I don't tell the walls to get built with Physi.js and just make them like normal, I guess 3 objects or 3 JS mesh objects, these things will just go through. However, oops, sorry. Oh, wrong room. However, because Physi.js is essentially a physics engine simulator, whenever you create an object, it will actually have weight. So a funny anecdote is that when we first started, we were building the walls using Physi.js, and we were not specifying a mass for it. So the thing is, because we're not specifying a mass, it was by default given a mass, I think, of 1. But that means it has weight, and because it has weight, the walls actually kept falling down. So we would build a museum, and the walls would just fall down and collapse on us. So a simple, easy trick to get around that is to give them a mass of 0. And with a mass of 0, they basically become immune to gravity, and that's what allowed the walls to stay up. I just thought that was a funny anecdote I would share. So let me go back to my original position, escape. I will refresh. As I said, we have a lot of things going on here. We have transparent materials, we have video in the middle, we have physics simulations, trees that are just randomly placed, we have multiple walls, skybox. Project gets kind of heavy, so that's why we try to, or at least I try to just keep everything close, set down to the minimum. For some reason, using Zoom to record the meeting or to record this video in particular actually consumes a lot of graphics memory and resources. I noticed that if I'm not on Zoom, this thing runs smoothly. When I'm on Zoom, it makes it run a little bit jittery. Turn on the ambient light, and now we have the boxes just being randomly moving around. I don't have anything else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Generate more trees. And as a final word of caution, the number of trees that you can generate and the number of boxes that you can generate is really up to the user. So I can just build boxes and boxes and boxes so long as I'm inside the physics room, until eventually my graphics card will just crash and say, hey, I cannot handle so many boxes being generated at once. So however powerful your computer may be, that's the limits behind this particular project. All right. Thanks, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the video.